Well, good afternoon. I'm Tim Walker, the Executive Director of the Metro Historical Commission. I'd like to welcome you to the 39th Annual Preservation Awards Program. This is really a great time to be in Nashville when the city finds itself in the spotlight as one of the nation's most desirable places to live, work, and play. And as such, development's moving at probably the fastest rate in our history. Growth is a good thing in many ways, but it can also create pressure to demolish those historic resources in our city that lack protection through historic overlays. We've been fortunate in Nashville to have the support of Metro Council and our mayor to landmark many of the neighborhoods and buildings that define our city. And now over 9,000 properties are protected. This includes 23 neighborhood districts and 33 individual landmarks. And this exceeds the number of properties protected in many of our peer cities, including Austin, Louisville, Memphis, Charlotte, Jacksonville, Indianapolis, and Atlanta. Today, there's an unprecedented demand from community groups, neighborhoods, and Metro Council members to continue to create and expand historic overlays. With a staff of only 9 to support the work of both commissions, our office is busier than it's been in its history. I'm very fortunate to have 8 very dedicated professionals in our office who carry out this important work. Otherwise, we would never have accomplished all that we have in the past few years. And I'd like to quickly recognize them. So the staff, would you stand up, please? Thank you. And Scarlett, she's in the very back center. Would you wave your arm? Scarlett is responsible for this program. And has been for the past few years, and she does a great job, and we really appreciate it. I hope you'll take the time to thank staff this afternoon. Well, MHC's Preservation Awards program began in 1973 with the support of Mayor Beverly Briley, and it's had the continued support of all 5 subsequent administrations, including our current mayor, Karl Dean. And Mayor, we really appreciate your support, and we appreciate you being here today. The program has a long history of success in promoting and recognizing the value of preserving our city's unique architectural character. And through the program's history, we've recognized hundreds of properties and projects. And today, we're excited to add to that list. But before we begin our presentation, I'd like to quickly recognize those who have made today's event possible. So would the Metro Historical Commissioners and Metro Historic Zoning Commissioners who are in attendance, would you please stand? Thank you. Our 2 commissioners volunteer their time and energy, and they provide guidance and support to staff, and we really appreciate their service. I'd also like to thank Historic Nashville, or H&I as we call them. H&I is our local nonprofit for historic preservation in Davidson County, and they are graciously co-hosting the reception that follows the awards. And I know there are a couple of board members here. Would you please stand? Thank you. I'd also like to thank Ann Brown and the Arts Company at 215 5th Avenue North for allowing us to use their gallery space for the reception that follows the awards. And finally, I want to thank the Nashville Public Library and its director, Kent Oliver, for allowing us to use this wonderful auditorium space. I now have the honor of introducing the chair of the commission, Dr. Bill McKee. Dr. McKee is a professor of education and public service management and the vice president of academic affairs at Cumberland University. Dr. McKee.
Good afternoon. That's pretty weak. Now let's try that one more time. Good afternoon. Say it like you're Nashvillians. That's much better. That's much better. Today's a great day of celebration, and we want to honor the people that have won the awards this afternoon. So if you're an award winner, would you just stand up from in the seats from wherever you are? Oh, we don't know yet? My script is a little off today. You'll just have to bear with me a little bit. Thank you very much. I got to see the pictures before the event that are going to be on the screen, and I assume that others had too. So we'll just move right along. We want to thank and recognize some other people that are here today. Karl Busey, who's the Davidson County historian. Karl, would you please stand? Chuck Sherrill, who's our state librarian and archivist. Patrick McIntyre, who's the director of the Tennessee Historical Commission. And Bill Koch, who's mayor of the city of Forest Hills. Mayor Koch. You know, it's a great honor to chair the Metropolitan Historical Commission. And when the mayor and I sat down, I said the front row here represents the very finest people in Davidson County. And what an honor it is to serve with you on this particular board. Today, we're here to say thank you also not just to the award winners, but to the mayor. Nashville is fortunate and has been fortunate to have wonderful executive leadership. And it has had wonderful executive leadership since its founding of the metropolitan government 50 years ago. And Mayor Dean has continued that tradition. So we're here to say thanks to him for what he does for the city and the citizens of Nashville. We're here to say thank you for what he does for the historical community here in Nashville. And we're here to say thank you for his concern and respect for the Historical Commission of Davidson County. So would you join me in thanking and welcoming Karl Dean, the 6th mayor of the metropolitan government of Nashville and Davidson County.
Well, thank you, Bill, for that kind introduction, and thank you for inviting me to be part of the 39th Annual Preservation Awards. And it's great to be here with such a great group of folks. And Mayor Koch, it's always an honor to be with you. And we're doing the budget right now, and actually budget hearings are going on, but I look out here and I see all these former members of the council who look so much kinder and gentler than what's going on right now. We have Phil Ponder, of course, and Jim Forkham, and Keith Durbin, who's still with the government, but in a different role, and of course Vice Mayor George Cate, who knows more history of Nashville than anybody that I know, and Dr. Busey, thank you for all that you do for the city. Bill is very proud of the commission. He did say to me, he said, look at that front row, and I looked, and I thought, well, these are all nice-looking people. He said, this is the best commission in Metro government, so thank you for your service. The theme of this year's Preservation Month, New Age of Preservation, Embark, Inspire, Engage, certainly resonates for Nashville. As a city, we've truly hit our stride, and that is something we should all be very proud of. The great urbanist and author Richard Florida recently visited Nashville and talked about why he believes Nashville is booming. But as both Richard Florida and the Triumph of the City author Edward Glaser will tell you, cities don't rise and fall by chance. There are very clear patterns to what makes a city successful. Some matters are beyond our control, like moderate climate and central location. Other parts of the equation we do control: a diversified economy, affordable living, business-friendly practices, high quality of life, and educated workforce. But what makes Nashville stand apart from other mid-sized cities that have the same qualities is our ability to attract creative and entrepreneurial people who value the quality of place. They want to be in a city that's attractive, unique, full of character, walkable, bikeable, and green. And preserving and celebrating our history is part of maintaining Nashville's quality of place. It's a special thing when you have a city that is springing forward in all the national rankings while also preserving its character and uniqueness. Like many cities across the country, Nashville has a lot of history, but simply having a lot of history is not enough. With history being one of the fastest growing segments of tourism, a city needs to not only have a lot of history, it needs to celebrate that history and make that history accessible and visible. And the best way for the city to do that is through historic preservation, which we do often and with zeal, thanks to the efforts of the Historic Zoning Commission, the Historical Commission, Tim Walker, and his staff. I appreciate each of you for the role that you have played in making a leader, making Nashville a leader of this new age of preservation, and the respect you have given and continue to give toward the process that allows us to do it. Without the preservation of many of our historic properties, Nashville would risk losing our sense of what makes us a truly special city. So thank you for your hard work and congratulations, and I look forward to hearing who is honored. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jamie DeStefano. It's been my pleasure to serve as this year's judge for the Preservation Awards along with Susan Besser. Susan sends her regrets that she can't join us this evening, but she's enjoying a well-deserved vacation. Before we get started, Susan, I would like to commend all of the nominees. It's clear that there's a lot of great preservation work taking place in our historic neighborhoods. Of course, this meant that judging these projects was not an easy task for us. But when we did review the projects and visited them in person, learning more about the context and the details of the work, some projects stood above the rest. Those are the ones we'll be recognizing this evening. So as I read the honorable mentions and the winning projects' names, will everyone associated with that project please stand and come on the stage at the center steps. I will describe each project as you come forward. We'll begin with the residential category. And here are the nominees. One property in this category received an honorable mention and 3 received preservation awards. The honorable mention in the residential category goes to 3614 Valley Vista Road. This 1926 Tudor revival features clinker bricks enhanced by skintled brickwork and weeping mortar. The team of Lawrence P. Brown and Associates and Herbert and Company guided the addition to the home, which included expanding the kitchen and adding a new upstairs closet. The project also included a new screen porch and renovations to an older screen porch. A new driveway and fresh landscaping were the finishing touches. We like how the new addition is subordinate to the original home, and we appreciate the small scale of the design. Great work. A preservation award goes to the Custer residents at 2812 Oakland Avenue. The team of Dream Inc. and Allard Ward Architects transformed this 1918 bungalow by reopening the enclosed porch and adding a large addition to the rear of the home. We think the design is a very creative update to a craftsman bungalow and serves as a great example of a unique way to modernize and update a historic home. Although the home has clearly been modernized, the project was very sensitive to the historic context and keeps in character with the Belmont Hillsborough neighborhood. Great job. Another preservation award in the residential category goes to 2519 Fairfax Avenue. When Eric Click and Click Carpentry took on this project in late 2011, the interior of the house was in rough shape. Using a combination of restored pieces and items handcrafted on site, the project updated the interior while maintaining its historic character. Replacing vinyl siding with stucco and half timbering in the gables transformed the home's exterior to enhance its Tudor character. The project also included a new addition appropriately scaled for the original home. We think this is an amazing project which keeps with the spirit of the original Tudor style and is sensitive to the character and style of the Hillsborough West End neighborhood. The final preservation award in the residential category goes to Roycroft Place at 754 Benton Avenue. One of the oldest homes in the Woodland and Waverly neighborhood, starting in the 1970s, Roycroft Place served as a 24-hour daycare and commercial catering facility before falling into disrepair. Gary and Autumn Andrade purchased the property in 2013 and enlisted the help of John Root, an elite building group, to rehabilitate this grand Queen Anne home. One of the most exciting finds of the project was the discovery of the original decorative wood detail underneath the aluminum siding. Wooden porch posts were custom made to match the originals, and era-appropriate doors, hinges, and hardware were used throughout the home. Pocket doors, mantels, and heart of pine flooring were all restored as well. The rehabilitation also included a new addition that is subordinate to the original home. We think this is a great example of a preservation-minded project, not just a renovation, and appreciate the team's attention to preserving the character of the home and the historic materials when possible. Beautiful job. And now we'll turn to the infill category. Here are the nominees. 2 properties in this category received an honorable mention, and 1 received a preservation award. The honorable mention goes to 216B 38th Avenue North. This new house in the Sylvan Park neighborhood is by the design and development team of Mitch Hodge and Woodland Street Partners. We like how this house reads as contemporary and is clearly not imitative. It draws inspiration from the area and relates nicely to the location. We like the creativity of the design and how the home appears to have changed over time despite its new construction. Nice work. An honorable mention goes to 513 Fatherland Street. Peggy Newman Designs and Mason Hope Development collaborated on this infill project in Edgefield. We like the contrasting materials and the form of the design, and we think the project bridges the gap between the various eras and styles of architecture adjacent to the home and helps bring some cohesion to the street. It's a great step forward in revitalizing this block. Well done. The Preservation Award for the infill category goes to 1318 3rd Avenue North. The team of Peggy Newman Designs, Infill Development Services, and Prime Nashville worked together on this project in Germantown. Taking cues for design and materials from the historic Tudor-style firehouse nearby, the duplex was designed to look like a single-family home. We think the project shows sensitivity to the variety of historic architecture in the neighborhood, and it is a great fit for the eclectic character of the area. Terrific job. And now we'll turn to the industrial and engineering category. This year we received 2 nominations for repairs to historic walls. Although many of us drive by these walls day in and day out, it's easy to forget their importance as historic property markers and landscape features. So we're very excited to see these projects including in the Preservation Awards program this year. The honorable mention goes to the Calvary United Methodist Church Hillsborough Pike stone wall. The exact date of construction isn't known, but we do know the stone wall along Hillsborough Pike was standing when Calvary United Methodist Church purchased the property 7 years ago. Over the years, the wall fell into disrepair. As stewards of the wall, Calvary UMC enlisted Natchez Stone Construction to disassemble the wall to the ground level and rebuild it using original fieldstone. To ensure the wall's longevity, the team carefully placed mortar inside, leaving it practically invisible to the discerning eye. The team also brought in additional stone to recreate the original soldier course along the top of the wall. The finished product looks terrific, and we commend Calvary and Natchez Stone for preserving this historic landmark element for the enjoyment of the many thousands who pass by every day. Great job. Is anybody here? Okay, I guess we'll go ahead and accept it on their behalf. Preservation Award in the Industrial and Engineering category goes to the Belmont Terrace Monumental Entryway. This monumental entry consists of 2 stone columns with 3 layered capstones and adjoining retaining walls made from hand-cut limestone. It was planned to serve as the main entrance to the Belmont Terrace subdivision, which opened in 1909. Over the past century, the tree root growth and atmospheric pollution took a toll on the wall. The wall is a distinctive landmark in the Belmont-Hillsborough neighborhood, so as its steward, the Neighborhood Association reached out to Metro Public Works for assistance in clearing out trees, roots, vines, and moss from the wall. The group then enlisted Dawson Culvert to gently clean sulfate deposits from the wall and to realign the stonework. Through trial and error, Culvert also determined the appropriate mixture to match existing mortar for repointing the pillars. We think this is a great example of conservation and commend Belmont-Hillsborough neighbors for committing to maintaining its beloved landscape feature. We'll finish tonight with the commercial category. We had 2 nominations in this category. A preservation award goes to the filming station at 501 8th Avenue South. Built in 1935, this former Gulf gas and service station served as a car dealership, rim shop, and restaurant before Demetria Kaladimas and Verlin Thompson of Genuine Human Productions purchased the property for use as a production and performance studio. Thanks to the team of Howard Switzer, Bill Schletcher, Joslin Construction, and Mason Art, the original stucco building, which had been obscured for years behind a cinder block addition, is now the centerpiece of the new design, which includes a glass enclosed lobby, a recycled brick facade, and a backlot courtyard for performances. We think this is an innovative new use for a historic building and a creative way to showcase the original structure. We also appreciate the team's diligence in securing so many salvage items for this project. From the 20,000 bricks and sliding glass door salvaged from a neighboring warehouse to the reuse of existing tile and old car parts in chrome, the project shows a lot of ingenuity, and it's clear that a lot of thought and heart went into it. If you ever visit the filming station, watch your step inside. The old curb might be underfoot. Excellent work. And last but not least, a preservation award goes to the Olive and Sinclair Chocolate Company at 1628 Fatherland Street. Originally built as an H.G. Hill grocery store, the building has served as an archway cookie bakery, 2 storefronts, and even a woodworking shop. In fact, it was Randall Grace, whose woodworking shop last occupied the building, who meticulously restored the store's exterior masonry prior to Olive and Sinclair's purchase. To make the building fit for a chocolate factory, the company turned to architect Nick Dryden and Dowdle Construction to oversee the transition. We think this is a sensitive rehabilitation to a commercial structure, and we think the team did a great job working with FDA requirements to retain as much of the building's original fabric and design as allowed. For example, by using industrial windows within the interior wall, visitors still get a sense of the volume of the interior of the factory space. We also think the team did a nice job of adding a sensitive second story to the rooftop and incorporating a lot of salvaged material. The vintage candy machines are pretty cool too inside. Great job. Congratulations to all of the award nominees and winners. Now I'd like to introduce Commissioner Bob Allen, who will present the first of 2 special awards this evening.
The Achievement Award this year goes to Paul Clements. A Nashville native, Paul Clements became seriously involved in researching Middle Tennessee history in 1976, and by 1980, was busy conducting interviews for Century 3 Nashville, the Nashville Heritage Project. Just a few years later, motivated by the changes in his childhood neighborhood and the loss of many of Davidson County's historic residential properties, Paul, along with Linda Mason and Stephen T. Rogers and photographer Ron Haar, embarked on a comprehensive study of antebellum homes in Davidson County. The result, a past remembered, a collection of antebellum homes in Davidson County, was published in 2 volumes in 1987 and became the quintessential resource for many residential structures in the county. After completing Past Remembered, he returned to earlier research and projects involving memory of Woodmont School, 1931 to 1982. His work continued with 4 other published books, and over the next decade and in recent years, Paul has contributed several essays to the Nashville Retrospect. Paul Clements' most recent book, Chronicles of the Cumberland Settlements, 1779 to 1796, has become another pivotal work for coverage of the frontier history of Middle Tennessee. Chronicles contains over 750 pages, and I can tell you it takes it's a year-long reading, but it's worth it. Along with maps and notes and a comprehensive bibliography for over a decade. Paul has meticulously researched and transcribed original records, diaries, and letters from participants and the direct descendants. Through painstaking attention to detail, he has managed to enliven the understanding of Middle Tennessee frontier life while also correcting several long-held inaccuracies. A few quotes on Paul. A Native American, this is from Bill Carey, a native of Nashville who doesn't even have a history degree, Clements has moved the history understanding forward one very large leap. He did this the old-fashioned way, by staring at microfilm for more than a decade at the Metro Archives and the Tennessee State Archives. From Gordon Belt, for anyone with an interest in Tennessee's early history, Cumberland Settlements is a book that deserves a place in your own library as a valuable reference resource and a chronicle of the settlements' stories of the past time. Paul Clements makes the Cumberland Settlements come alive and shatters long-held myths along the way. From John Edgerton, the late John Edgerton, who we miss so much. Paul Clements is a lifelong, self-made, hopelessly addicted microhistorian whose basic instinct and ambition has been to learn all that is knowable about the subject at hand. His new book is the fruit of a 10-year commitment to document, annotate, and index all extant material of, by, or about the explorers and early pioneers. From Ken Feith, I have known Paul for many years, beginning with his time at the State Archives. He was working on his books at that time. I've always found him to be resourceful and dedicated researcher. Paul is one of the few that will brave the sometimes complex world of researching original records to give his readers a glimpse of the past. And Ken's favorite quote is, for Paul, it doesn't matter who writes it as long as they get it accurate. And from myself, we've known Paul at the archives for a long time. He occupies that back table on the left, and we've often joked that at some point Ken Feith and I are going to get him a nameplate for that table because he's always out there. And I want to say that in his new digs on the 3rd floor, where the Metro Archives is moving, Paul, you will, as soon as we open, Ken and I are going to give you your nameplate. So as soon as you pick the table that you're on and you want to settle at, you'll have a nameplate. And now I present the Metro Historic Commission Achievement Award, Paul Clement.
I didn't hear anything Bob said. I was still hung up on the good-looking young guy who did that first book and the geezer who now stands before you. I mean, I didn't hit the rest of it's a big blur. I hope it was nice. I'm sure there were nice words that Bob had. And I asked him, I said, am I supposed to say anything? And Tim and Scarlett said, you can if you want to. And I said, I thought about it. I said, sure, I'm going to. And I asked Tim today, how long can I talk? He said, well, just put however long you want to talk. So it won't be as long as it could be, but longer than you might wish. There's a lot of thanks going around. I wanted to thank several people. First of all, Metro Historical Commission and Scarlett in particular, because I know there's a whole lot of work involved in these things, so thank you. As far as places, Metro Archives has been one of my two homes, and also the State Library and Archives has been the other one. And over the years, the first book was almost all the State Library and Archives. And these places, I could go on for 30 minutes talking about how important these places are. But as far as people like me, you know, you got to have somebody sort of gathering information, but the information has to be there and to be kept. And I've been stunned over and over again in the course of writing this book. I'd find some really obscure book in the footnotes of a very obscure book and say, there's no way in the world this is going to be at the TSLA. And lo and behold, there it is, because somebody who's been dead for 60 or 70 years had the foresight to do it. And as a society, we had the good sense to put some tax dollars there. So that's part of what I want to say is that. But the hospitality that Ken Feith particularly has lavished on me in the last few years helped just immensely. There's just, I'm trying to think, I made a little list of people so I wouldn't forget. It's not like Hollywood or anything, but just a little bit. But yeah, my cousin and friend George Clements, who I don't know if he's here or not, but George did the maps for this book, and there are probably 300 of them. And it's one of the problems with the old books is that they would tell you this particular station, there's an attack here, and they went over there, and you don't know where here or there is. And George took an immense amount of time, despite having 3 very young children at home and a more than full plate, to render these maps as a volunteer, and it's excellent. I looked at some other options, and he's just terrific at what he did. So if you haven't seen the book and look at those maps, you should be impressed. And George was great. My wonderful family, and particularly my long-suffering wife, who doesn't go. She's every bit as she's better than I am. Is an historian, and she's doing things right now that I'm sure that as soon as our children are gone, she'll get back into the archives where I met her. Jim Hubler had a little bit to do with that, but we'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute, big boy. Bob mentioned John Edgerton, and just about the last time I was in here was at John's memorial service. And John's, I've been trying to channel John today because there's some things I wanted to say. And John's ability to communicate and be in his authenticity was just staggering. And so I got on YouTube and looked at John for about an hour, and it made me feel better. And it didn't make me feel better about being able to communicate, but it made me feel better about being in contact with John. But he was a constant encourager in this, and he kept on needling me and say, "You're not going to finish that book. You'll always find some reason to keep going." I said, "John, I promise you, I'm going to get it done." So he got to see it, and it's one of the last reviews he wrote, and I was so appreciative of him and miss him enormously. And I wanted to thank Billy and Jennifer Frist. Billy's a very old friend of mine, not as old as I am, obviously, but long term. And we talked about the need for this, and I said, it's really been since 1858 that anybody tried to take the early history of this area and present it. A lot of things might have come out of attics and basements and closets by then and put it all together. And he was, Creative Foundation was generous enough to largely fund this. So I'm really glad he did, and here's why. And this gets into a little bit of a story, and you'll see why I had to take the bully pulpit. I won't have it long, but I got to take it when I get it. One of the most staggering things that came out of this, and again, this I told you I'd come back to Mr. Hubler. Your name is on the recipient of this Tennessee Historical Society gift from Dr. Oscar Noel. You remember this? Dr. Noel was somebody I know very well and knew very well, and coached his grandson and know Laddie very well. His wife had a mother who died in Memphis, Tennessee in 1949, and his daughter remembers seeing this. Dr. Noel's wife remembers seeing these old papers, bound up scroll-like, tightly wrapped in a trunk. And finally, she went back. Gosh, this is 1980, 31 years later, and Dr. Noel and she brought them, and Jim signed off for them, and they sort of sat there after being processed at the State Library and Archives. And I started looking at them, and I knew enough at that point to know what I was looking at. I was going, this isn't what it looks like it is. This is somebody who was there, and it turns out I'm highly persuaded it was Edward Swanson, who, for reasons, I think after Haywood wrote his book, somebody went and said, listen, we want to, maybe some of it was used before, but some of it wasn't. Some of it's not touched until it came to light in 1983. But Edward Swanson, to give you an idea, 19-year-old guy who comes to what will become Middle Tennessee with the Robertson in February of 1779, and has an incredibly specific account of where they were, what date, how they got here. And this is before anything was here. They were on their way to prepare for the Robertson-Donaldson deal. And all the way through it, all the places where there had been real thin spots in history of that early period, it's just rich. He's telling you he was there. He's telling you exactly what happened. And so that was one of the real kickers. But here's the best part of what he did, I think, You remember when the Hubble telescope went up and the mirror was screwed up and they couldn't see, it was very blurry? Well, this is like the fix on the Hubble telescope. With Swanson's information, it put everything into sharp focus. And the thing it put into best focus was the Battle of the Bluffs, which many of you have heard about. And it took me a while to kind of, I wish if I was brighter, it'd hit me right off, to figure out how important that was. And this is sort of, I'm going somewhere with this. I do tend to drift, and I'm not doing it at the moment. Yeah, somebody can yell at me if I do. The very quick story is there were in the spring of 1780 there were probably 1,500 people in what became Middle Tennessee in 8 different population centers. By the next year, there were maybe 150 in 2 population centers. There was and I'm not talking about good guys and bad guys and heroes, by the way. This is basically a cultural collision that took place, and this is one of the places that was a ground zero for that collision in the early 1780s. And there are plenty of people that thought, hey, the wrong side won in this, but it was what it was. But anyway, the population had been degraded to the point it really couldn't sustain itself, and it looked like it was on its last legs. And on the morning of April 2nd, and I'm cheating if you don't know the story, there's ways to read it, find out. Come to the Cumberland River Compact next Thursday, and you can hear a long version of it. But basically, it boiled down to 20 individuals went out from the fort and were cut off by, according to Edward Swanson, who was there, 250 creeks on one side and 250 creeks on the other side. And the odds were of them getting back to the fort were pretty much dismal, wouldn't even begin to express it. They did get back because of the confusion caused by some dogs attacking them and some horses getting away, and there's enough of a hole for them to get back when they shouldn't have against all odds. And that, I'm not giving you much meat, but here's where I want to go with this. It changed America in Nashville. Nashville wouldn't be Nashville. We wouldn't be called Nashville. We'd eventually been settled, I'm sure, by westward expansion, but it wouldn't have been in 1780. And I've put my best thinking into it, and I think it might have been 1790 or after that before anything happened. It would have taken a while. If that beachhead had been lost, and I'm speaking, kind of parroting the victorious side, but D-Day happens 7 years ago next week, and this was sort of like D-Day. This is sort of like a landing. The beachhead was established. Beachhead was almost lost, and if it had been lost, and it should have been lost, really. If it had been lost, all sorts of things don't happen in my view. And my friend Dr. Wayne Moore, and we can get some scholars up here and talk about this. But I've gone over a lot of different ways, and I can't see how in the world things like the Louisiana Purchase could have happened, or really the southern states would have formed in the way they did. And so what I'm telling you is something magnificent as far as cause and effect with America happened right here in this city. And it's only the records have been there to talk to us, and they finally showed up. I happened to be the guy that picked them up. Somebody else could have picked them up just as well as I could, but I happened to do it. So I'm very excited about, as you can tell, about this. And I came to this, I came to an event about 17 months ago where the former governor of Maryland spoke from this very spot. And he talked about, hey, Nashville, we got to have smart, you want to be smart, you want to be distinctive, you want to be different. You don't want to be the same place as everywhere else. Find the things that you're unique about and present that. And I'm over there, I almost look like one of those bobblehead things you get at a Sounds game. I'm going, yeah, right on. Even some of the Chamber of Commerce people were nodding, which is interesting. But they kind of heard it, and I'm thinking, this is a great opportunity. And the opportunity is, we've got this place that's about to be raised, the remains of the Bluff Station, Fort Nashboro, sorry. They call it the Bluff Station, but we'll call it Fort Nashboro. And there's plans in the works to have that be presented. And what a wonderful opportunity we have to present this thing to our school children every year and to people who come in to enjoy our Music City Center, and for us to know our own story. It's a hugely important story, and we need to start telling it. And and I'm getting, as you can see, the progression from my 1987 book to this book. You know, I don't have that much time. I want to see this happen sooner rather than later so I can go around. You can go out right now, and the best thing, here's the best thing about it. If this had been done, 20 years ago, we wouldn't have caught the break we've caught. The actual fort was where the park is. You know that park that's just to the north side of the Fort Nashville? The Fort Nashville replica barely misses the footprint of where the actual fort was. So it's possible to rebuild, and that's part of what David Curry's done such a wonderful job of planning. We will be able to go to a visitor's center, a place to get acclimated, say, here's what's important about this, and then now let's walk out into this park and see where everything was. And here's where you can do. You can go right to the place where James Robertson was, where his house was. There was enough scholarship done 150 years ago more to establish that, where his next door neighbor was, where John Buchanan's house. I mean, you can go stand there. There's nothing like in history being able to go stand somewhere. People love to go to the Gettysburg battlefield, the Battle of New Orleans, to be in the place where. And this is one of the premier spots to me in American history. And we know we hadn't quite figured this out yet. I mean, I have, and just because I spent time on it, but we got to get with this thing because this is so good. And to me, every time, I coach kids for 40-some years, and I'm a kids guy. And to think about every year we got kids coming through our system who we teachers want to turn them on about history and say, find them a way to connect. And they're going straight through their history curriculum with local history right there in a city that's hugely important, and the connection's not being made. So that's one of the things we've got to get to work on. We've got a lot of good work being done, obviously, but we got a couple of things more, and then we can really start catching up. And I will say as I close, sorry to talk so fast, but when I was getting out of college, Nashville sort of defined itself by what it didn't have, and then it got a TPAC, thank Martha Ingram particularly, and then it got, later on, it got the Skirmerhorn, Martha Ingram again, then it got the Frisk Center of the Visual Arts, and we started growing up as a city, starting to become the progressive city that the mayor of Maryland, among many others, have said we needed to be, and we've got this big trough, and the big trough is local history. We still are the largest, to my knowledge, largest city in America that doesn't have a local history museum. John Edgerton and I, anguished about that some, and it'll happen at some point. It has to. We got a wonderful state museum, but it's not the Nashville Museum. So we get those two things done, then culturally, we're kind of caught up, but we're not there yet. So we got work to do, and the people in this room can make it happen. So that's my evangelical rambling thing, but go down to that park and walk around, and pretty soon you're going to be able to, and I'm sure this is going to happen at some point, almost happened this year, I think. You're going to be able to stand in the place where these wonderful things happened, and I'm not doing the story justice, but we don't have time for me to do it justice. Come to the Cumberland River Compact next Thursday, 12 o'clock, and I'll tell you all about it. All right, thank you.
The final award today is the Achievement Award. After the Achievement Award, is the Commissioner's Award. And just a brief personal note, I have loved our history for almost 40 years. I started working where Chuck is the director in 1975, State Library and Archives. I love collecting this firsthand information. So when Eleanor Knoll called and told me that she'd found these things in the family attic, she also said that she'd found some of the original Matthew Ray hand-drawn maps from on-site surveys of the counties of Tennessee. You'll hear a little bit more about that map in a minute. The people and the organization that we're honoring today, I think, are very, very significant for our history. I mean, they're the people that were here first. We're honoring the Native History Association. And the president of the association, Pat Cummins, is sitting here with his son. The vice president of the association, Toy Heap, can't be here today. But these guys are really incredible. They are trying to save our earliest history before it's all obliterated and forgotten about. By walking the walk and walking the pathway of the Trail of Tears, they found Old Jefferson, which is on the shores of Percy Priest Lake. It was one of the towns that the Trail of Tears walked through. And they have walked through there. They can cite where buildings were. And remarkably, they even found one of the abutments for the first bridge ever built across the Cumberland River, the one that Lewis Wernwag built about 1823. Here's some of Old Jefferson, and you can see the lake there. They also do a number of tours. This is the toll bridge. If we can pause here just a second. That's the Matthew Ray map, one of the little vignettes at the bottom. It shows the city of Nashville, but this is the first bridge across our river. It was a covered bridge, and Lewis Wernwag, a German engineer, came here and built this. They found the abutment that's still under the Victory Memorial Bridge, and they invited some of the people from the State Museum to come down there and share this information with us. And I invited one of my buddies there, Jeff Sellers, whose wife works for TDOT. Well, guess who owned the land? TDOT. So Jeff told his wife told the commissioner, and suddenly we've got the ball rolling. They have cleared the site, and we'll see some pictures of that in a second. The bridge at the top is one of Wernwag's earliest bridges. This is at New Hope, across the Delaware River, upriver from Philadelphia. The other two are some paintings that I knew of that showed that bridge. The bottom one is actually a funeral cortege going across the bridge in 1922. The next year, though, the bridge burns down, but you can see what it looked like. This is a bridge up in Kentucky, which is probably the most like the bridge we had here in Nashville. It had the same number of piers to it, and the abutments were about the same size. But look at the windows, too. Our bridge had windows to it so that daylight could get into it. And these guys are incredible. They find all of this material by doing their research. They've also done tours of the Trail of Tears site, and these are the abutments. This is the one that's actually on this side of the Cumberland River, but look at that, the stacked stone there, and it has amazing iron pieces in it up at the top that were used to hold the wooden elements together on the bridge as it was crossing the river. So we're lucky that TDOT went down there. They've cleared the site. They cut a tree off at the top of the abutment. They've cleared some of the brush. There's a homeless camp there, and they've fenced it off, and they're getting ready to do an interpretive signage package down there. But it's just amazing. You can see there in the bottom right picture two of those metal pieces that were used to hold up some of the decking to the bridge, I believe. But this is after they've fenced it and sort of cleared the site there on the bottom. And our honoree today is the Native History Association. They have done interpretation at Mound Bottom, Jefferson, Old Jefferson, and the abutment. And Pat, come up here and get your award. You deserve it.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm somewhat flabbergasted being in the same room with people I admire so much. There's so many people I'm looking out at, and I know so many of you in this audience. And to be standing here in front of you and among you, people whose work I've followed for a number of years myself, people who have served to inspire me greatly, I'm very, very honored. And I know our Vice President, Toy Heap, also would be saying the same thing if he were here with me right now. You know, on his behalf, I thank you, and we're just simply blown away by this. We can't believe how quickly things took off for our organization beginning in 2012. We had long had a dream to bring about an awareness of Native American culture and heritage. It all began right here, of course, and we've lost so much over time, over the last 200 years in Nashville. So much has been lost in relation to our ancient culture. You know, literally hundreds of thousands of graves were dug in the Nashville area early on by curiosity seekers. Some people not simply curiosity seekers, but some with a genuine admiration and a respect for the people they were trying to study. But in the process, so much was destroyed. And we kept watching this through the last 2 decades, essentially, in this area, watching how much was being lost and so quickly. So we decided to do something in the form of forming this organization. It was initially Toy's idea. He came to me and kept saying, we need to do this. And I finally relented and said, yes, sir, we've got to do something. So, not really realizing what we were doing, we set out to start organizing tours. We knew the information. I'm an archaeologist. I have formal training. And we both have enough experience having dealt with the Native American community, the archaeological community over the last 20 years. We knew enough to take people out to these sites and start giving tours. And so that's what we began to do. And immediately from the first tour that we gave, we received just an enormous round of applause from the people who came and attended our tours. And from that point on, we kept planning these tours, and more people kept showing up. And we started to put together sort of a mission statement as to what we were going to focus on. And the first thing that came about was the Trail of Tears, because we were approaching the 175th anniversary of the Cherokee Trail of Tears as it passed through Nashville on the way to Oklahoma. Nashville lies on the northern land route of the Trail of Tears. And the detachments that traveled through the area, there was a lot of documentation to support where they had gone, how far they had traveled on a daily basis, about how many people were in each detachment. So we had all of this information. And we started to think, where's there signs that tell about this? Well, there were no signs. We knew the approximate route and the alignment was recorded by the National Park Service some years ago. But as far as signs and being able to go out and visit a lot of these places, you simply just couldn't hop in your car and go out and say, okay, here we are at a point on the Trail of Tears. It was not that easy. So we set about finding these locations. And as Jim mentioned, one of the first places that we decided to look at was Rutherford County and what we call the alternate northern land route through Rutherford County. It had been long recorded since the 1960s with the destruction of the town of Old Jefferson with the building of Percy Priest Lake, that Old Jefferson was now inundated by the waters of the lake and was no more. It was simply under 60 foot of water. That was a lot of what was written, and it was all inaccurate. But the books say what they say, and we tend to believe what a lot of people have written in the past, and we at times come upon things that we can disprove, and so we set out to disprove what we were reading. So Toy starts driving the route virtually on Google Earth, using an 1878 hand-drawn map as a reference point. He's on Google Earth, actually driving the route, and he comes to the area of Old Jefferson expecting to find it flooded. Well, it wasn't flooded. The roadways were still visible faintly through the tree lines all the way across Old Jefferson. The old ford was still there on the west fork of the Stones, and the other stretch of the road on the opposite side led right up to Old Jefferson Pike like it did in 1838. And we were amazed to see that we had a section of the Trail of Tears still intact. He calls me on the phone and says, guess what I found? Guess what I found? And I said, what have you found? And he said, I found Old Jefferson. And I said, okay, I'll be out there at 6 o'clock in the morning. So I jumped in the car at 6 o'clock, daybreak. Had to stay on the phone with him. He guided me in on the cell phone because I didn't know where I was going or what I was looking for. But on Google Earth, he basically guides me in, tells me where I'm at, and had to get out of the car and walk about a half mile through the woods. But eventually, I turned to my left, and out there in front of me was the Trail of Tears. And we're quite sure it hasn't been looked at as the Trail of Tears, since 1838. The history of this whole area out there had been long forgotten. So, needless to say, it was an extremely overwhelming experience for me. I thought of my ancestors that walked the Trail of Tears. They could have very well walked that very trail, for all we know. We do know that 4,000 Cherokee took this alternate route as opposed to going through Murfreesboro itself and following the old Nashville Pike into town. The reason why they even took this alternate route was that they had been told that the toll roads in Murfreesboro were going to fleece them, and they didn't see the need for having to pay excessive fees in Murfreesboro. And they were told if they went through Old Jefferson, they would avoid that. So that's exactly what they chose to do. Well, the old route is hardly discernible today, but we discovered that it comes up just east of Smyrna and Laverne, up to the point of Percy Priest Lake, to the Four Corners Marina at Percy Priest today. Some of the original old roadbeds still exist out there. As far as we know, they're the only surviving original roads that were traveled by the Cherokee in 1838. Still existing in Davidson County. So you see, we keep stumbling on all these things and finding all this incredible information. Wasn't soon afterwards that we found Old Jefferson that we started to search for the Nashville Bridge site. We knew that somewhere off the northeast corner of the public square in 1838, the Cherokee crossed a bridge there. It had been recorded and documented. Here again, Toy, with the foresight that he has, says, well, we need to go down there and simply look. And so we did just that. We went down there and started walking up and down the sidewalk along the Gay Street connector, thinking, now where would they have put this bridge? And one day we were down there standing under Victory Memorial Bridge, and we looked down over the bank, and sticking out of all this old brush.
Have your attention, please. The library closes in 20 minutes.
All right, I'll try to make it.
Checked out. If you get to the library close, please make your way to the return desk on the first floor.
Well, as I was saying, thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Yeah, we'll be quick. Looking down through the brush and the trees, happened to notice a large structure sticking out of the riverbank. Toy says, well, it might be an old building foundation. And I said, well, yeah, it very well might. But we need to crawl through all that brush and see for ourselves. And so that's exactly what we did. We simply crawled down through there and started looking around. We started immediately recognizing components that Jim pointed out in the photographs that led us to believe that we were on to something here. Well, thus began a 2.5-year full-time job of trying to figure out what we had. So we both weren't working at the time, and we made it our full-time occupation to study the Nashville Bridge site. And like I said, we spent every day, 8 hours a day, invested almost 3,000 hours in actual man-hour research time. We kept showing everybody everything that we would find. I would call Tim and say, Tim, look what we've got, look what we've got. Oh, that's great, that's wonderful. And I would call TDOT, they own the property. Look what we've got, look what we've got. Oh, that's wonderful. Well, how can you prove any of it? And so, oh, well, that this is what we've got, but you can't prove anything. We need someone who's well-versed in historic bridge construction, someone who really knows what they're talking about. So we set out on a quest to find that man, and there again, that took us about a year to find someone who was qualified enough to come and look at our historic bridge structure. We finally were able to do that with the help of the National Park Service. His name was Jim Barker out of Bloomington, Indiana. He agreed to come and look at our bridge, but there was a small matter of money. Professional historians, engineers in particular, expect to be paid for their services, and rightfully so. And we didn't have a clue how we were going to pay for it, because we're a very small little nonprofit, just getting going. But if you believe just strongly enough, and if you have the faith, it will happen. And sure enough, wonderful friends started coming forward. Historic Nashville, came forward, offered up what they could. National Park Service came to us and said, let us help you fund your project. That doesn't happen. The National Park Service, the federal government, just doesn't give away money. But I guess we had done enough that we convinced them that what we had was the real deal. And it was very important to them to interpret the site as a Trail of Tears location, of course. So, with their assistance, and with the assistance of so many good and wonderful people, it wasn't long before our engineering report was finished. We started handing it out as quickly as we could to all the parties involved. And I'm very happy to report that TDOT has now jumped on board as well. And Commissioner John Schroer has been just amazing in telling me on the phone, whatever you guys need to get this done, just let me know and we'll see it happen. So far, that's the way it's been. The site has now been cleared off. The trees are gone. There's a nice, beautiful fence in front of it. And interpretive signs are to follow. TDOT is still working on a management plan for the project, drawing the city of Nashville into the negotiations, into that management plan as well, because it does sit on a Nashville greenway, and it holds so much potential for the interpretation of early Nashville. Not just the Trail of Tears, but the development of our city. It was the first bridge to ever cross the Cumberland River anywhere along nearly a 700-mile length of the Cumberland River, and this was the first bridge. So, our thanks to Dr. John Shelby and Robert Weekley and those early fathers of Nashville who had the insight to help build the Nashville Bridge and to make all this history possible. I want to dedicate this to my ancestors who had to endure that long walk, those ones who had to cry, and those ones who just had to endure so much. We're truly honored, but this is for them. It's why we do what we do. We have a sincere love and a passion for what we do, and it's because of our ancestors. They've instilled that in us, and we have an obligation to see that through. So I thank you. Thank you very much. I am so honored to have all of you here and have the chance to talk to you today. So thank you. Thank you so much. Congratulations. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, sir. All right.
Good evening, I'm Brian Tibbs, and I get the privilege of wearing two hats tonight, the chairman of Metro Historic Zoning Commission and also a board member of Historic Nashville. And what an incredible program. I think these are, I really want to commend all of the nominees and awards that were given out tonight, and particularly to Paul Clements and the Native American Association, well, let me get that right, Native History Association. What a great way to end such a great program. As an architect, you heard about those surprises, and those surprises start off like we got a surprise, now it turns into an opportunity, and then it turns into a gem. And I really just want to commend everyone again, just because of we know the intimacy you had in all your projects and everything you've done, and it was tonight just is a great example of just what it turns out to be. Sitting on the commission, we see these projects, and so we know the effort you put into them, and I just can't thank you all again and just commend you all for the great work you did. On behalf of Historic Nashville, we're happy to be a co-sponsor of tonight. We're all in a relationship here together. Everything we do together, we're always calling Tim, and he's calling us, and that's kind of what we feel like is going to be more of awareness to these great properties, and everybody gets a good glimpse of these properties. I invite everyone to go out to our table outside to learn more about Historic Nashville. We've been around for 45 years. We have an easement program that's designed just to help properties like this. We also sponsor Nashville 9, which is kind of a great thing that started in 2009 that shows properties that are endangered and brings awareness to them, and we've had a lot of successes over that program, so I invite you all to do that as well. Last but not least, I'm here to also get everybody ready for the Arts Company. That's where we're all headed for the reception afterwards. It is also Historic Nashville is one of our easement properties. So I hope everyone comes tonight, but thank you all once again. It's a great night. We want to thank the mayor for being with us as well, and everyone else tonight. Have a good evening.